What's up guys? For those of you guys who do not know me, my name is Torenthal, and today I've put together a guide about gaining advantages. In this video, I'm going to be talking about some different ways you can find, make, and abuse advantages in your game. This video should go hand in hand with my next video, snowballing objectives, so I hope all of you guys will check out that video when the time comes. Every advantage you gain, whether big or small, is a building block towards your final goal of the game, the victory screen. It's also a fundamental part of mastering League of Legends. Let's take SKT's mid laner Faker for example. Faker is known as one of the best players in the world because he has mastered the ability to abuse every advantage that is given to him. He even takes into consideration the respect and fear other mid laners have against playing him, which gives him the ability to play slightly more aggressive than you would usually see other mid laners play. You're most probably not going to become like Faker after this video, but I hope I can help you become a better player. So let's get started. There are so many tiny little things that you can potentially take advantage of. As such, I won't be able to cover them all, but I'm going to do my best to talk about some of the main ways that I have learned to better myself in League. Since there are a lot of different ways you can gain advantages, I'm going to split this video up into 3 parts. We're going to be talking about naturally gained advantages, enemy-given advantages, and self-made advantages. Firstly, let's talk about advantages that are naturally gained. A naturally gained advantage is an edge that is given to you without you really having to do anything. To better your understanding about what this is, let's talk about Zed. Perhaps one of Zed's greatest advantages is the fact that he is manaless. He uses energy. A lot of people don't use this as built-in leverage he already has. By forcing trades in lane, the enemy laner needs to use their mana-hungry abilities to stay even with you in lane. Once they're low or out of mana, it gives you a great opportunity to zone, or perhaps even all-in the enemy. Now perhaps you don't play Zed, but take a moment when you're in game or looking over one of your replays and ask yourself, am I using my champion kit to the fullest potential? Let's talk about bot lane for instance. If you're playing Ezreal with a support Soraka, say against a Leona Jinx, you have a sustain advantage. Trading even with the enemy is a natural advantage to you. Why? Because you're able to sustain all that lost health, while the enemy has to regenerate naturally. Let's switch it up now. You're playing Jinx Leona against an Ezreal Sona. You know you will lose the trade wars, but you have an absolutely dominant all-in fight due to your ability to hard engage with your heavy CC and dominant early game damage. This is generally the same concept as a Talon versus Annie in the early laning phase, except this time with items. Talon may have more sustain due to the fact that he started a crystalline flask and 3 potions, but Annie will be able to output more damage due to the fact that she has a Doran's ring. So again, as you sit through your game or looking over one of your replays, make sure you look at your enemy's items compared to your own and see what advantages or perhaps disadvantage you may have. Another great example of a naturally gained item advantage is with Corki. Once he finishes his Triforce, there are very few champions that can output as much damage as he can in the mid game. Make sure you abuse this by trying to start fights or perhaps sieging turrets. So I guess a TLDW for this section is to make sure you're using your kit and your champion power spikes to the fullest potential. If you guys have any questions about the strengths of your champion, please leave a comment down below and I'll try to help you out. Let's move on to enemy given advantages. Everybody in this game is human and aren't always perfect. They can't be everywhere on the map, they have bad habits, and perhaps they're just having a bad game. Now a lot of you guys may have trouble with this because like me, you guys are all probably nerds and geeks. You need to be a bully, smell their weaknesses, acknowledge them, and then hit them where it hurts. What do I mean by this? Well, as we talked about before, a lot of champions have their strengths, but they also have their weaknesses. Let's talk about Amumu. Amumu really needs his first and second blue buff in order to sustain himself through the jungle. By taking one or both of his blue buffs delays his build by a lot. Let's do some simple math. Say Amumu starts his blue buff around 210. You know he's going to be low in health and struggling to take down his blue. Perhaps you start by taking your red buff, you can walk to his buff, scare him or kill him and take his blue. Mwahaha! Failing that, let's do some more math. Amumu probably finishes his blue buff by 225-ish, and buffs take 5 minutes to respawn. So why don't you pay his blue buff a visit at 725? Again, a lot of champions have weaknesses, so try put yourself in their shoes and try to hit them where it hurts the most. Why gank bot lane when playing against an Ezreal Thresh, when you can easily gank that Twisted Fate mid lane who's constantly pushing and only has a flash to escape? The advantages that enemies give you are oftentimes out of their control. An example of this is if you see the jungler on the other side of the map, you know it's safe for you to harass or all-in your lane opponent, or perhaps zone them off a few minions. It's little things like these that make you a better player. Also, these advantages oftentimes snowball into something bigger, like you winning a team fight or perhaps you securing a dragon or baron buff. Like I said, every little advantage is you building up a staircase to victory. Your opponents behind the screen will also make mistakes, but you need to make sure you capitalize on them. If the enemy AD carry shows bot lane 30 minutes into the game, and your team is nearby mid lane or top lane, that should easily transition into a free baron or perhaps a free pick on the enemy team. Another example of this is if the opponent mid laner is out of mana. That could transition into a dragon fight, because a manaless mid laner is oftentimes pretty useless, giving you an advantage to your team. Less subtle mistakes by the enemy that you may not pick up on. Watch the way your opponent moves. Perhaps it's the fact that they step a bit too close to your minions while last hitting. Or perhaps they forget to move into a safe position after one of their minions die. Or they always dodge to the left. Simple enemy mistakes are a sure way to gaining an advantage. I guess that concludes that section, so let's move on to advantages you can create for yourself. Making your own advantages oftentimes requires you to think like a chess player. If I do this, what good thing will happen because of it? There are so many little things you can do. By simply being in the fog of war, you add pressure to the map. The enemy doesn't know where you are. You could be roaming, stealing a buff, or taking an objective, they just don't know. As such, when I'm playing mid lane and there are no minions for me to take for 10 to 15 seconds, I disappear just by standing a little bit behind my creep wave for a bit. This way the enemy bot laner and top laner might play a bit more passively and cautiously. Same thing goes with the jungle. The less knowledge the enemy has on your whereabouts, the more scary you become. Another thing you can do to further your advantage is to push lane hard after your enemy dies. By pushing 1 or 2 minion waves into the enemy turret, it allows your minions to die to the turret and will deny golden experience from your enemy laner. Perhaps you're in late game and you're trying to figure out the best way to take Baron. By starting a slow push bot lane, over time it will force an opponent to clear out the gigantic wave you created. If the enemy who decided to clear the wave does not have teleport, this can transition into a 5v4 fight in your advantage, or perhaps allow you to get an uncontested Baron. Putting down wards in helpful places will oftentimes lead to extra knowledge of the enemy's whereabouts, and you can maybe transition that extra knowledge into an objective play or a pick on someone. Check out my warding guide to see some good places to ward before objectives. Finally, we have the simplest one, outplaying your opponent. It's easier said than done. As always, you need to think about it like a chess game. What abilities do they have? What can they do to counter me? How can I avoid being countered? Try and think as many steps as you can before you go for the big outplay. As I said earlier, making your own advantages often requires you to think like a chess player. If I do this, what good thing will happen because of it? And that concludes my tutorial on gaining advantages. I hope you guys learned something, and if you guys have any questions, comments, or feedback about my video, please post below and I promise to read every single comment and I will often reply to you personally. If you guys want to see more videos like this in the future, please make sure to like and subscribe and I'll be sure to deliver. Thank you guys all for your support. Have a great day.